Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start with the story in which our OP stepson turned out to be a petty thief and was punished for it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. If you want my vodka, it's going to taste like vinegar. Bit of a backstory. So my second wife has a 19-year-old son, and before we were married, I'd go to visit her because she lived in a different country. One time when I went to visit her, I found a bottle of my favorite rum on sale, so I brought it with me to have in my coffee while I smoked my cigar in the morning. For those curious, it's Florida Caña 7 Años. It's a dark rum, and where I lived in Costa Rica, that's all I drank. I took a picture of it and sent it to my buddy back home, which turned out lucky for me. I went away for the weekend with my wife and left the bottle. I did measure the level, and when we returned, it was the same level. However, it didn't taste right in my coffee, and I thought of a bunch of factors, but I couldn't figure it out. Same coffee, same ratio, same cream. I looked at the picture I'd taken about a week earlier, and I took another picture from the same location, and the rum was lighter. If it wasn't my favorite rum in the world that I drank for 8 years in Costa Rica, I probably wouldn't have noticed, and I didn't even notice the fact that it was a lighter shade. The kid was busted. I showed the two pictures and the difference in amberness, and of course she didn't believe me but stood up for the thief. Fast forward to now. I don't generally drink hard liquor, but now is summertime and I make apricot liqueur. Basically, just put apricots in vodka and let it sit in the fridge for a week. I know apricot season is coming up, so when I see big bottles of vodka on sale, I buy it. Everyone's living with me, including the laziest kid in the world and my rum drinker. I decide to be proactive about the alcohol and keep 4 vinegar jugs to use as blocks of ice when I go camping. I pour my vodka into one of those empty jugs and put a small mark on the handle, then place it in the pantry, not where the wife might use vinegar. I take a 4-liter jug of pickling vinegar and filled up the vodka bottle and wait. I found out when he fell for the trap by the death stares I got. He didn't tell his mom, and neither did I. F you, kid. Edit. Just thinking about this story, and I think that kid was probably the unluckiest thief out there. There were 2 instances where he unwittingly picked my favorite item, and that was his downfall. If I hadn't taken the picture of the rum bottle, and if it hadn't been my favorite rum in the world, I probably wouldn't have noticed. We also went away for the weekend, and I left my cigar stash at her house in the fridge. Not being American, I have access to all cigars, and in the bag I had about 20, just enough for 1 per day, even though I didn't smoke 1 per day. There were a whole bunch of Cubans and non-Cubans, but there was one Partagas D4 that I bought for my birthday. If he'd taken a non-Cuban, I wouldn't have noticed, but he took my D4. After that, whenever we left the house, I take an inventory and pictures and send the pictures to my wife. We also installed a keyed lock on our bedroom. Florida Caña is great, but if you're in the mood for a really great rum, give Ron Zacapa a try. It's from Guatemala, but it's outstanding. And our second story. You want me to write fiction? Fine, I'll make it a good one. I'm a machinery operator in an industrial setting. This means we have a lot of trade professionals on site 24/7 to minimize the impact of any breakdown. On this particular occasion, I had a heated press shut down on me because it was reporting a temperature of around 3,600 degrees Celsius. The required temperature range is about 275. Since I have multiple stations on this machine and it's designed with failures in mind, I'm able to just run with that one station disabled with negligible loss in production. So I put in a mid-priority work order and pretty much forgot about it. Now, I'm not a ticketed professional myself, but since this is half the temperature of the surface of the sun, and I didn't appear to have been immolated alive, I put the problem down as a malfunctioning sensor. A few hours later, in the shift, an electrician stopped by to get more details. I'm a bit of a curious person, so in the interim, I looked up the melting point of steel, which is what the actual contact surface of my press is. Depending on specifics, it's around 1,500 degrees. The boiling point is around 2,900. I expected this information to be for personal amusement only. I was wrong. I described the problem to the electrician and showed him my reading alongside all the other stations which were normal. Obviously, I informed him that a reading in the 3000s was not possible, but he disagreed and told me, maybe that's the temperature. Fair enough. I had to look it up myself, so I'm not going to fault him for not immediately realizing this reading was nonsensical. I told him that steel boils at less than the reading I gave him, but he wasn't having it, and insisted I put in a WOP, work order parallel, for the engineers. Officially, this means the diagnosis was not immediately clear to the operator and creates a second tag with an alternate explanation so that when one tradesman closes the tag, the alternates are closed automatically. Unofficially, it would act as a black mark on my records, essentially telling the entire maintenance crew that I don't know my machines and don't know what I'm doing, and would result in more people questioning my judgments in the future. I don't have a lot of those, so I was already pretty annoyed that he was trying to push me around over this, but I can see from his point of view, it would seem reasonable to assume that a random person just happening to know the state change temperature for metals is hard to believe, so I was still resolved to remain reasonable. I went to the supervisor instead and told him the situation, expecting him to just tell the electrician, I'm in the right and we have to go look at the sensor during our next breakdown or scheduled halt. Instead, he just told me to come up with an alternate prospective diagnosis and put in the WOP. Notably, he didn't actually specify engineer as the electrician I had. I should note here too that the supervisor in question is an experienced welder, meaning he should know full well how ludicrous the demand was. Since this wasn't an urgent issue at any rate, I decided to take my time with the new work order. I reached out to the manager to get the procedures for a work order that requires out-of-house services and government agencies. Waiting for those details meant I'd be taking this home and finishing it up on my own time, but at this point, I was invested. I actually went through the drafts on this thing, but the finished product was a masterpiece of bullcrap. Since 3600 degrees would have sublimated my entire machine, I worked under the assumption that my lungs had been coated with various aerosolized metals that were blocking whatever little function my lungs could possibly retain after being exposed to apocalyptic temperatures. I explained that all the events since encountering the reading must therefore be hallucinations brought on by my failing brain as I succumbed to certain death. I made a point to detail how grateful I was that the delusion had apparently isolated me from the mind-melting agony my body must be in. I summarized my last will and testament in the vague hope that in my dying utterances, it might actually be communicated to somebody still alive in reality. I recommended immediate contact with Environment Canada for disaster cleanup. I requested a specific funeral home, but specified that I did not wish to be cremated. I also made a point to mention by name the two people who had graciously informed me that my equipment could be expected to function normally in the temperature range of a sunspot. These work orders are the size of a postcard, and the actual request is typically 4 to 15 words. I handed this sucker in with 3 sheets of foolscap stapled to it. If it had actually been processed, it would have created a mountain of paperwork. Since I can't imagine Environment Canada reacting well to receiving a major disaster notification, followed by, actually sorry, never mind, one of our employees is being a butt. Predictably, I was hauled up to speak with management before noon that day to explain myself. I did receive a write-up, which I refused to sign and demanded a union rep on hand since I had no way to follow my orders without being ridiculous. They declined to bring one in, so that should be the end of that. The faulty sensor had been replaced by the time I got back to my machine. Great addition since cremation temperature is about 2600 degrees Celsius cooler than the machine was. And our last story. You're the boss. This happened to a friend of mine about a decade ago. She was working the bar at a small bar/bistro kind of place, and her boss had recently hired a new employee that was a friend of his. First week, she was kind of humble and didn't really make any impressions besides being a bit slow and sloppy when it came to serving tables. My friend was the one who got to use the company car to pick up the morning newspapers, but she could also use it for personal matters however she saw fit. That didn't really sit well with the new employee because she felt entitled to the car and all the perks that came with it. One day, out of the blue, she started to boss my friend around, sending her to do odd jobs, help out in the kitchen, whatever. My friend knew that she was friends with the boss, and since she didn't want any drama, she complied with every request. So off to the kitchen she went, leaving the front of the house entirely to miss I'm friends with the boss. The place quickly filled up with people during lunchtime, and as you'd expect, she couldn't handle the job or the pressure even a little bit. She was in the weeds right from the start. The place was a mess. Floors covered in trash, tables not being served, the bar was full of dirty dishes, and so on. Because of all that, she wasn't answering the phone in the bar when the boss was calling, so he came to check what's happening, and as you would expect, he was furious. He was yelling at my friend, asking her why she was in the kitchen and not working front of the house, and how everything was a complete disaster. She told him honestly that if his friend wants to be in charge and boss her around, she'll comply because she'll automatically lose every argument based on their personal relationship, and finished off with, "I will quit today. I don't need this crap." She didn't leave immediately after that and stayed for a coffee. The boss had calmed down at that point and said even if she quit, the coffee was on the house and whatnot, and stayed to chat with her, and they were actually having quite a few laughs and a good time. Miss Entitled saw all that and thought that the boss sided with my friend in the situation because they were still chummy. She walked up to the boss and said that she'll not keep working for him as long as my friend is there, not knowing that my friend quit 10 minutes ago, and added some profanities to spice things up. The boss just gave her the coldest look possible and pointed her to the door. My friend kept working there for another few good years. The boss got lucky his friend showed her true colors. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.